Hello everyone. Welcome. This is Mihai Algiu, somatic psychotherapist, marriage and family therapist, and the founder of Circle of Being Somatic Shadow Work, which is a deprogramming modality, a way to become more conscious, more awake, and deprogram our suffering. Combining in this Circle of Being Somatic Shadow Work, I've been combining Eastern teachings, awareness-based teachings, so-called awakening, enlightenment teachings, with modern-day psychotherapeutical methods, somatic psychotherapy, processing trauma, repression, pain body. And so my approach is to combine them both. And so you who watch this, you know me from there, as doing guided meditations or being a KI facilitator, killer being facilitator, or shadow work, or whatever, you know me. But this video is very meaningful and special and dear to me. Actually, we had to pause it before we started because we were getting emotional. I was getting emotional. I had to wipe tears in my eyes for what we're about to do now. So this is my very good friend, Peter Ingle. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Mihai.
And I have met Peter about almost 30 years ago when I was a early 20-year-old man. And we've been together friends, and especially friends on a spiritual path for all this time. So we are together and connected for the first 15 years, and then we have disconnected for the last 15 years. So we didn't know what each other were doing, and so we reconnected recently. And what connects us a lot was our beginnings, my beginnings on the spiritual path, and I believe also Peter's beginnings on the spiritual path. And so I'm not sure if you guys are knowing this, but I was really deeply committed and deeply inspired and deeply focused on this fourth way as a system of ideas, fourth way teachings, as brought to the West by two Russian mystics, spiritual teachers, Georgy Ivanovich Gurdjieff, so Gurdjieff, and Uspensky. And somehow Gurdjieff brought this teaching into the West about 100 years ago. We're just contemplating on that. And then somehow this teaching spread to the West, and I encountered this teaching when I was 17 years old. I encountered Fourth Way. I encountered this book, In Search of the Miraculous. And one reason I'm in America, one reason I'm actually talking to whoever I'm working as a client or doing groups, one reason, the reason why I'm here was because I read this book, In Search of the Miraculous by Peter Uspensky. And it's a wonderful book. So when I read that when I was 17, and for some mysterious reason, I was seeking the deeper meaning of life, or the truth, or awakening, enlightenment. I wasn't sure what I was seeking, but I was really inspired and seeking it fiercely. And when I encountered that book, I encountered the Fourth Way system. And I remember that as a really young man, I was trying to apply this on my own. I was trying to apply this, observing myself, studying myself, being present, or so-called self-remembering, or witnessing, and soon after I was trying to do this on myself, on my own, I found I read in those books that I can't do this on my own, and I need a school, I need a group, and I need a teacher to apply this teaching. So soon afterwards, by the time I was almost 18, I found this spiritual community that was based on these Fourth Way teachings, and it had centers in Romania. at centers around the world, and I didn't know, but it had the headquarters were in California. So I joined that, and I was part of that spiritual community focused on the fourth way for about 15 years. And that's where I met Peter. Yeah. So just fast forward, bear with us here. Yeah. So I met Peter in California maybe 28 years ago. And Peter was my impression of Peter was that he was like a gentleman. He was a kind, welcoming, wise, open-hearted gentleman who struck me as being highly intelligent, educated, and also I felt this, that he himself was very focused and inspired and fiercely studying and applying these fourth way teachings. And at that time I was in my 20s, so Peter at that time was already in that community for decades, and somehow I resonated with his intelligence and as well as his wisdom. It's like a reactor, huh?
A jet, flying over. It'll pass, yes.
You think that's a good
2 jets, 2 military jets.
Yeah, so I felt like his spiritual spirit as a jet that was kind of inspiring me actually at that time. And also Peter, like 30 years ago, he already wrote some books about, or a little book about, or several books, I remember, on the exploring the ideas of the fourth way teaching. And so I remember that I would read his little booklet. I don't have it with me, but I read his booklet about transforming negative emotions, which was a core principle in the fourth way, transmuting the energy of our suffering into more presence. So I remember that I would go to him and ask him, and so we were side by side for about 10 years. And it was always wonderful to hang out with him and talk to him. We'll talk until we had, our head will hurt. Yeah, towards the end of this period, somehow I started to realize, I started to not resonate anymore with the current teacher of that community, and I felt like he was straying away from the teaching of the fourth way, and he was going some direction that I didn't feel right to me at all. But somehow I was still there with a lot of spiritual brothers and sisters, and still somehow applying this teaching, and it seemed to be working. Although there was this inner conflict with the current teacher. And anyway, about that period, I started discovering other teachings. So I discovered more like Zen meditation, and also teachings of David Hawkins. And as I was sharing this stuff, my discoveries, I was always hunting for truth, hunting for the method, hunting for something, higher knowledge, give us today our daily bread. I was looking for the daily conscious mental bread to help me wake up and free myself from, I didn't even know from what, because I was young and naive. But anyway, so then I started sharing this teaching with Peter, and those teachings were not necessarily, I was doing it a little secretly somehow. I was like a spiritual rebel, so to say. So I was, so I was meeting with Peter a little bit secretly, and we're discussing these other teachings, and we're meditating in the cemetery. And somehow this transition moved to a head, somehow escalated, and somehow I left that community. And then Peter soon after that left that community too. And I went full on with my path, dealing with hardships of life and losing my spiritual community and losing a lot of my friends and losing what I thought to be my most important teacher. So I went on facing life, and also continuing seeking and finding a lot of other teachings on my path, a lot of other teachings for 20 years or so. And I lost track of Peter. So recently I reconnected with Peter, and also I found out that he himself kind of continued the journey on a somehow similar trajectory and slightly different. And then I found out that Peter wrote several books. So actually, I forgot to say, Peter is recommended, is one of my favorite authors, I can say. So he wrote a bunch of books that probably they will come in the course of our talks, and I will put a link to where you can get them if you are interested. And so, yeah, these books were about nature of consciousness, nature of reality, about the process of awakening and embodiment. What I appreciated was that you thought deeply based on your application of this stuff. It's not just intellectual, but you thought deeply and applied these things deeply. So you are churning and trying to hybridize this lifelong love of the fourth way teachings with non-duality teachings, the direct path teachings, Advaita Vedanta, Zen. Yeah, so I found it, and you sent me one. I contacted you. You sent me one of your books, and then I got the book and I started reading it, and I was like, oh man, this is amazing. So I could see that just like myself, you really try to integrate them, to integrate these teachings that seemingly seem different periods, different area, and somehow they fit together. It may not seem right initially, but I could see how you saw how they fit together. You hybridize them, make them your own, and combine them in such a way that it seems seamlessly, it works together and it supports each other. Yeah. So I really was inspired by that. And so we recently decided to reconnect now kind of every day. And it's really gives me a big boost for my application of this teaching. And anyway, so what's interesting is that recently encountering you, there's a movement happening that I've been telling my clients or people working with me. I'm getting back somehow to this teaching of the fourth way that was with me all along, Somehow, even if when I wasn't talking about it, even when I'm coming back to the teaching of fourth way, while at the same time integrating it with, meditation, witnessing, mindfulness, self-inquiry, Ramana Maharishi, self-inquiry, the direct path, trauma work, Kilby inquiries work, repression work. Somehow it's all makes sense to me. And it makes sense to me. And the easiest way somehow to, let's say, help people that are really interested to apply this teaching is to have a bigger map. A map is not the territory. The map is the map. But a bigger map that points the way towards the territory. So I started to see how the fourth way is that bigger map for me. And this trauma work, repression work, transmutation of suffering work, studying the body-mind work, self-inquiry, self-remembering, it's all fits. So it's interesting, after 30 years coming back to you, and my intention, and Peter, we were debating, we are honing our intention, but the intention is getting pretty firm now, is to create a series of discussions, the two of us, where we are going to take some of the core principles of the fourth way inherited from Gurdjieff and Uspensky, to present them in a succinct, clear way, and then to go into discussing them, how to apply them, how it connects with other ideas, how it connects to So we use the presentation of the ideas in a fresh yet succinct way, and then riffing about it, jamming about it, making them alive and how it connects with everything else. So that's what we are planning to do. And I believe this is our first, more like the context we are kind of sharing. And the plan is to, share more on this, why I didn't abandon, why we haven't abandoned the fourth way yet, why we are still churning on it, why. So that's I'm starting the ball here.
I appreciate how you formulated your perception of what comes across in those books that you read. You used the word once when we were talking hybridize, a way of sort of hybridizing the fourth way system with these other teachings. I think more, well, kind of specifically non-duality as I see it. I'm not a non-dual specialist. I haven't gone deeply into any of the direct path non-dual. I've sort of dabbled in them, but what I kept seeing was how they overlapped with the fourth way. And the fourth way gave me this lens for understanding, I think, the essence of all those teachings, and which is the same essence behind the fourth way system. And so, yes, it is a hybridization. It is a melding of all of them through the lens of the fourth way. And a simple way I've said it before is that the fourth way and non-dual or direct path teachings, they're the same, they describe the same circle. And they have the same point in the middle of the circle that is the intention. That is where you're trying to go, or what you're trying to realize, or what's trying to realize itself is at the center of the circle. And the direct path might be the most simple. There's just a circle with a dot in the middle. That's it. And the teaching is somehow you want to try to intuit what that dot in the middle is. There are different analogies you could use to describe this, but that's one I use. Whereas the fourth way is this very elaborate, it's like a maze. The circle is just filled with information and pathways and diversions and details, and it's a complex intellectual system geared toward the Western mind, a very scientific mind, dispenses with Sanskrit terminology, which most of the other teachings all hang on to, for better and for worse. And so the lure of the direct path is, I think, you can kind of imagine you're at the center of the circle, but you're not. It's you imagining yourself at the center of the circle. It's not what is being really spoken about in those teachings. Whereas the lure or the distraction of the fourth way is you can get caught in all the details. The fourth way describes, you might say, in detail what we are not. The non-dual, the others, they point to what we are. And this is where I see the overlap, because the fourth way also includes who we are, what we are. And it talks about that, but there's a lot more about what we are not. And the goal being, of course, the more you realize what you are not, the more consciousness becomes conscious of what it is not, the more consciousness becomes conscious of itself as consciousness. That is what the non-dualist, that is what the direct path is pointing to right from the beginning and at every step, what I just said, that last bit. So how to overlap them, how to help a mind understand the fourth way in terms of what it's really about, what's really behind it. And then similarly with non-dual and direct path, is it true that everyone can just make that leap? All these people are waking up, everybody's becoming conscious, it's a plethora of teachers, et cetera, no school, no methodology per se, some practices. Is that, and I'm not dismissing anyone's attempts or anyone's presumed real experiences. I just know for myself the value of having both and understanding both. And so that's what the books are about. And that's why it's interesting to come back and connect with you, Mihai, after all this time and see you, as you say, you went on your own loop, as we were talking about before we started this video. I went on another kind of loop. We were going along, and now we're back, and there's this alignment, and it's very interesting. So I'm interested to know more about when you went on your loop, your outer trajectory, as you said, what brought you back specifically to the work you do now with your clients, your business, the circle of being, and the shadow work and the inquiry work? Because this is where you and I, we don't disagree. We might diverge a little bit in terms of our understanding of what that is. So I'm interested to hear more from you. What are you doing with that work? What drew you to it? How do you think it's helping your clients? And where would you hope it would lead someone who works with you? So those are questions I've had for you. I know you've had some for me too about my books, and you find, well, Peter, I might want you to clarify here what you said in this paragraph or on this idea. So we're not completely eye to eye, but it's not disagreement. It's divergence, I think, of understanding and experience. And I'm eager to learn from you what you've been doing and how it ties into what I've been doing.
Yeah.
When
all right.
you're
I will get to your question. It's a wonderful question. I want to answer it, but I'm just aware of a different audience, and so just for the clarity of our presentation here, so we are talking about various styles or various pathways that seem available, at least in the 21st century, for people interested in consciousness exploration, awakening, working on themselves. So what Peter used this term, like the direct path. Direct path is some type of teachings in the non-duality, and they are and as opposed to progressive path. So they are direct path as opposed to progressive gradual path. So we can say that the fourth way is a gradual progressive path that we start with small steps and covering territory and growing and purifying, and anyway, it's a gradual progressive path. And the direct path, they say, hey, let's not worry so much about this or that. Why don't you find out what you are? Find out what is your true self. What's the nature of the true self, the I? Go for what you are. Find that out, and then go straight for the center of the circle, as Peter was saying, and then everything else doesn't matter so much. Discover that and stay with that. So that's why it's called direct path. You go straight for the prize. Yeah. Now, I spent quite some time on this direct path, and I can say that even if you're on a direct path, it's still very gradual because we still have all the conditioning and all the pain body and all the mechanical unconscious aspects, and because we still are kind of unconscious. So no matter how we call it, progressive or direct, you still need to put some work and it takes time. Yeah. So that's what we're talking.
Mihai, may I add something there, I think, which is an understanding I have come to is they don't exclude one another. There is not the progressive path and they're actually both. It's sort of different aspects of the same thing. And another way to view it is the progressive path is sort of the path the mind takes, trying to understand what all of this is about. The direct path refers to consciousness realizing itself. And that can happen directly at any moment. And so it's sort of the progressive path is the mind on a horizontal line. The direct path is consciousness or awareness, which is the term the non-dual communities use, on a vertical thrust, you might say. So I see that it's it's not necessary to think of them separately or to have one exclude the other. And that again comes back to this idea of bringing them together. How does the direct and the progressive path, what would it mean if those are overlaid on top of each other?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that enliven both?
Yes. Actually, that's I see this, it's for them to work and to be more a complete map towards a better place. Yeah, so out of the woods of Mordor into the Shire, into the meadows. You know, I feel like one needs to combine them. Actually, I believe at the beginning we have no choice but to start with the mind. You know, and so at the beginning, no matter what we think, the consciousness is asleep to itself and the mind is operating. The mind is the boss and the mind is seeking and searching. So that's necessary to address the mind, to educate the mind, to tell the mind what to do and what's the way to go, and to develop some aspect of the mind that is really interested in this and is willing to make effort. Yeah. So now at some point, for somebody who made this transition to be interested in these matters and to make effort and to make this more important than anything else, when such a person gets to that degree of intensity, then maybe other things are possible. And then maybe the direct path becomes available, because that mind, the seeker's mind, quiets down, and the presence in the seeker becomes aware of itself, and something is different. And then now maybe a direct teaching about the nature of consciousness now is going to be useful then. And this lofty teaching about the true nature of the I may not be so useful at the very beginning. So I see more like a progressive fourth way approach, or some progressive approach feels right at the beginning, and direct path may be more available, accessible, useful a little later, and then I guess they can still overlap.
I think it too, it depends on the individual experience. I don't want to speak for Eckhart Tolle, but my impression is he experienced this sort of complete transition or transformation or transcendence, where, let's use the word, consciousness became conscious of its own consciousness, of the fact that it is consciousness. And it took him, I think, 5, 6, maybe 10 years to study some teachings to figure out what had happened. In other words, his mind didn't know what had happened. His mind had to catch up, and it had to have some tools, some concepts with which to formulate and explain to other people what had happened. And then he wanted to facilitate other people arriving at the same experience, the same transcendence that he had experienced in himself. And so he set about, he had to use some terminology, and he does, and he came up with the idea of the pain body, which later sometime we can correlate to ideas in the fourth way. And so that's another example of someone, he awakened, and then he had to train his mind to teach it. His mind had to learn what had happened.
Yeah.
As opposed to someone, say in a progressive way, developing their mind and going along, and then suddenly consciousness pops out of the mind, recognizes itself, realizes it was already out there. It was watching you make all these efforts and do all this study, and the whole time it just didn't realize itself. And another thing that comes to mind in this respect, and then I'll let you get back to answering the question, is, do you know, we talk about schools and all of this. What I realized at one point is that what we're referring to as consciousness, it never joined a school, it was never in a school, and it never left a school, which is very interesting. And so, however, being in a school was very useful and necessary for a certain purpose over a certain amount of time, even though time, you can debate what is time. But yes, however, in the end, what someone gains has nothing to do actually with any of that. But you had to go through all that to realize that and value it in a new way.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. Eckhart's story mirrors the Ramana Maharishi story, which is a great non-dual, great master who had this total awakening as a teenager, and total and debilitating, destabilizing, and he couldn't function for a long time. And then he didn't know what was happening. His mind, just like Eckhart, his mind didn't know what was happening. So only later he found the Upanishads and various Gitas, and he was like, oh yeah, I see. So that helped him understand what process already happened, and that helped Ramana give him help him develop some tools and some teaching to help other people, so. But I guess this is not our case. We came as a young man, and we didn't have a major blast awakening, and we just did some grinding. We were grinding on this path. So let me get back to your question. So you're asking me, yeah, how
What
it.
brought you to the therapy, the shadow work, the inquiry work, and how are you trying to help your clients and your groups, and where you would hope that will lead them?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess to make like a quick description of, so after I left that fourth way community with quite a lot of emotional turmoil and disillusionment and various emotional stuff, somehow I just put all my energy in finding some integrous teachings and teachers that were alive. So I just found actually great teachers and methods and all of that. And somehow I put aside the fourth way. I just didn't think about it, although that was almost impossible because I was thinking about it for like 15 years. And I really not just thinking, but think about it first thing in the morning and think about it last thing in the night, and then try to apply it. And I did have certain results, and so it wasn't like, okay, forget about it. But anyway, it went back seat, and front seat was my enthusiasm towards other teachings, pathways, methods, teachings, Adyashanti, Thich Nhat Hanh, Eckhart Tolle, conversations with God, Zen, Vipassana, Buddhism. Then I discovered psychotherapeutical methods that I resonated with, and then I discovered shadow work, men's work. I was in part of this men's community, Mankind Project, I'm very grateful for. And then going into prison, doing this men's work. This men's work is a combination of Jungian, shadow work, Gestalt, psychodrama, which I didn't know what those were at that time. These were like, it just seemed very experiential, very real, very authentic, and very transformative. So I did all that. Then I went to, started to contemplate becoming a psychotherapist and went through various trainings for that. But on my own soul, somehow I found sooner or later, the teachings of the direct path and the teachings of Francis Lucille, Jean Klein, and there, Francis helped me see that some of the things I was still doing from the fourth way. I was practicing these fourth way tenets or practices. I couldn't stop. Basically, I was practicing these ways, but there was some distortion in them. I had some distortion, some lack of understanding. I was, I was engaging in certain practices, fourth way techniques, with a good intention, but it was some misunderstanding. And also my misunderstandings was coming to the fact that I was young and naive. Also, my fourth way teacher, the first fourth way teacher, he himself, I could see he had some serious issues and misunderstanding. So, you know, this principle of transmission, you get transmission of wisdom, you get transmission of confusion, you get transmission of various things. So, yeah, actually, it was a period of trying to, I'm sure you went through that, and I will ask you, a period for trying to discern between the healthy, good aspects of the fourth way teachings and some of the distorted, untrue, and unhelpful aspects of the teachings I got from my teacher, yeah, who, as you know, went away from the fourth way teaching. So there was a few years of trying to do that. And when I got to Francis, yeah, he helped me stop certain fourth way practices. And he was aware of, somehow he would say, hey, that thing that you're doing, I want to cure you of that. And because that was helpful for you, but now it's blocking you. You need to stop that.
It would be interesting at some point, I don't want to interrupt you too much right now. It'd be interesting to hear an example of what that was.
It was somehow, it was a residual commitment and dedication towards this practice of awareness, which for me took the form of this some mindfulness application, coming back to the present moment, coming back to here and now, being aware of sounds and aware of the feelings and aware of thoughts, and not allowing to think. So I will just snuff away thoughts to come back in the kind of here and now Zen thing. Yeah. And there was some kind of effort to be more aware. I was making an effort as a Mihai, as a Mihai, which was not investigating what that is. So Mihai was trying to be more aware, which was an effort that I was doing for a long time, and somehow it had its place. But and that Mihai trying to be more aware, it was like and again and again, and it had also this element of contraction, lack of relaxation, and a lack of allowing of thoughts. Actually, was like I was snuffing away content. So instead of, let's say, noticing thoughts, allowing it, it was like, we'll push things away. And with, yeah, so he helped me cure me of that. And somehow that was useful. And I was a little stubborn, but it was useful in order to realize some other things about, yeah, to understand about the true nature of awareness. And somehow it was important to, yeah, help me to let go more of the fourth way. Yeah. And, but later, as I was doing that kind of work, the direct path, I became aware that somehow it lacked guidance about what to skillfully do with the pain body and with trauma and stuff like that. So then I needed to somehow find other methods to include my suffering, in my investigation, and to include it more, to include it in a way that, without trying to change it, without trying to get rid of it, without trying to transcend it, more like to really be with it in a very thorough psycho-somatic way. Yeah. So, but you're asking me about the fourth way here, yeah, and why am I coming back to it, and how is it connected with my work with clients? Yeah, what it is here is that as I somehow abandoned the fourth way in my mind, I started to work with clients, and they had suffering, and they had inability to stay conscious in everyday life, and which in itself is a suffering. you know. And so I was trying to help them. How can I better help this person? Because I had a bunch of tools and methods and stuff. So I would be surprised that very often some fourth way tool will come to me as being the most suitable. So I would often I would find that one of those methods was the right key for that person. So at the same time, I was reluctant to give too much fourth way theory because it's so thick and comprehensive, and I didn't want to fill their head with all of these things. So I'll just do a tactical, hey, try this, and taking out of the context, not explaining the theory, giving a short download on the theory. And I noticed this was happening more and more, you know. Yeah, so I noticed gradually that that was very useful. Many aspects of the fourth way work, I would bring it with clients while not telling that it's fourth way, while taking it out of the context, while veiling it, while watering it down. I was doing all of that, and that seemed right at that time. But I got tired of it, and I could see now I can see it more myself how it all fits and how they can help each other. You know, trauma work, fourth way work, non-duality work, shadow work. They're all necessary somehow, and they all fit together. And so and by reconnecting with you now, yeah, I got inspired to have somehow not to be on my own presenting all of this, somehow to have a little partner to share this and make these ideas that are very thick intellectual, to make them actually simple and applicable, you know. So that's where I'm at now. I would like to give the full credit, full attention, and the full context of these fourth way ideas. I realized if I take them out of the context, they lose some of their power, actually. And I realized I've done that. I took the cosmology out of the psychology in the fourth way, and in other teachings too, in the non-duality. In order to really grow and evolve and wake up, there's some study of what's happening in here, but there's a study of the cosmology of what's happening out there and how they are correlated, and how one needs to study both in order to be at peace. So I think that's my answer at this point to your question.
It makes me want to also add from my side what my intention is.
Yeah.
With us, we've talked about it a little bit, but I think it would be nice to say it again out loud that we reconnected, and on one occasion a few weeks ago, we actually met in person for the first time in 15 years, and we were talking about all this, and you said, well, Peter, why don't you come out of your books? Why don't you step out of your books? Like, it's a little safe in there in the books, isn't it? And I thought about that, and yes, that's true. And being more passive by nature, that's sort of a nice place for me behind the books, because I've never considered myself a spiritual teacher. I guess if you could put me in a category, if you wanted to, you could put me in the category of spiritual writer. But I thought, Mihai's right. I want to come out of the book and be even more real in person and see where that goes and see where that leads. I've thought many times over the years, what does it mean to have a group or a school? Why is the fourth way put emphasis on that? What is teaching? What is learning? What is the role of student, the role of teacher, the value of working with other students, fellow seekers, travelers? And I have not been able to put all of that together in a cohesive way that pushed me into something other than writing. And so then I met you again, and you are serving as my inspiration to, as I've said to you, to open this door. I don't know what's on the other side. I don't know where it will lead, but I'm looking forward to, as you know, it's very different to actually speak about these things than to just think about them or even to write about them. To engage in this communication has a magic of its own and a power of its own, and it reveals many things about you and your understanding also at the same time. In fact, it gets back to what's the value of working with other people. That's one of the main. And so I look forward to us talking, you challenging me on things you think I'm not. I want to learn from you. I know you're open also to learning from me at the same time. And this is to me, looks like a wonderful journey of discovery.
Yeah.
So that, yes, that's.
Yeah, you know, for me, just talking to you these days, these few weeks, and going back to some of this, yeah, it's inspiring. What I mean by inspiring is like emotional word. It's like the fourth way practice, the remembering of being, the all this knowledge is actually meant to be applied, need to have an actual conscious experience without words. Yeah, but engaging with you somehow was like a booster. Yeah, this term is popular these days. I mean, it's not popular, but it's like a booster, a booster shot in my spirit. And also, yeah, I can see that Mihai, 18 years old, Mihai, 25-year-old, Mihai, 32-year-old, misunderstood some of these teachings. And coming from the vista of the other teachings, of having, I don't know, became more conscious, I'm going back to the fourth way map. I'm like, oh, it's so beautiful. That was so good. I misunderstood it. It's so helpful. So I am, yeah, that's my experience with it. Also,
Another intention. Please continue. Go ahead.
Problem with that's the thing. What sometimes people come to me, because with some other people in some groups I will speak about some of this fourth way stuff, and some people will say, man, this is wonderful, this fourth way. What book shall I read? Where shall I study? People come to me, even like 4 months ago, people come to me like that, and my answer was, hey, no, I wouldn't send you anywhere. No. So I would have this approach because why? Gurdjieff and Uspensky died long time ago. I haven't met them. I got some written recollections of somebody, and so they are fragments. And actually, that's why I appreciate Uspensky's honesty and integrity and humility. He wrote this book, which was the fourth way, as he received it from Gurdjieff, and he called it fragments from an unknown teaching. Yeah, so it was not a complete thing. So I'm dealing with fragments, and I'm dealing with fragments put in a book by some people who died. So that's why that's not, is one of the ideas. The fourth way is to have some direct contact with the source of the teaching, or at least with somebody who lives the teaching, somebody who is living the teaching, that ingredient of not just books, dogma. Rumi would say, spend time with those who are reminding you of your Lord, who not only speak wisdom, but are that. Yeah. So I guess you are an example like that. So it's not some dead knowledge in a book from 100 years ago. So it's like, okay, this knowledge that went through Peter's understanding, and you are living it. And so I could see that's alive, So one of my intention is that to offer to revive this teaching in a way that is lived, is not just in a book. Yeah. So, and they are wonderful fourth way books that we are going to suggest, like from Uspensky, from Rodney Collin, from Gurdjieff. Moreover, there are some wonderful books from Peter. Actually, I'm enjoying them a lot. And they, you know, the cool thing about Peter is that he's alive. So there's the knowledge, there's the wisdom, and then, you know, it's, think about it. I know who was saying it. Although it's a big metaphor, yeah, but you have the Bible, which if you take what Jesus said, it's 12 pages of font 12 times New Roman. So what Jesus said in the Bible, if you put it all together, it's about 10 pages of what Jesus said. Yeah? Okay. Now imagine that some miracle, you get a whole book written by Jesus. Yeah? That would be a little bit different. Yeah? Now, moving the line now, how about that there was a recording of a satsang with Jesus and his disciples, the recording of the Last Supper? That would be interesting, yeah? Now, how about was a video of that? And if Jesus had a YouTube channel, yeah? How, and he would talk, and, you know, how about that? And how about that he would be now alive and he will have a YouTube channel and he's meeting with people, yeah? So, of course, we are, this metaphor breaks down. We are not Jesus at all.
But it
We
makes
are.
me think about the fact, Mihai, that that we are alive right now, and what you said about revitalizing these ideas. Another intention I have, and we've talked about also, and I hope we will bring to bear as we talk, is to talk about all of this, to talk about the fourth way concepts in terms of how they apply right now. To me, today, living my life today, that's what the fourth way is synonymous with. And so of course, it's full of concepts, full of ideas, theories, and so on. How do they apply to me now? How do they relate to this idea of being more conscious, more awake, experiencing something higher that you feel attracted to, but you're not sure what it is? How can that mystical side of the fourth way also be made very practical? How can the theoretical side be practical? How can they join in the practical now with our lives today?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I wanted to ask you about your own experience with the fourth way. And, you know, I'm doing lots of videos and people know me more. And so, and I know you. And so I would like people to know you a bit more and understand a little bit your involvement with your fourth way. And yeah, and as I see you and I know you dedicated your life to the study and application of these things. So can you share a little bit, like, all right, I'll throw you some questions. Maybe tell us a little bit like how you encountered it and how it was for you. And also if you can share about, after decades of being in that fourth way community, how was it to now move it or somehow discover other teachings, and how was it with the integration of other teachings, and how come that you know, many people they like move on, they say they move on. They study, I know many people from that community, they studied that fourth way and then they got disillusioned or disappointed in some personal way, and then they just moved on and they forgot about the fourth way. Somehow you are still finding value in it. And so why? And what do you feel like it has, in which way has improved your life or made your life different?
It's a lot of questions.
Yes.
Well, I also, like you, I encountered In Search of the Miraculous. And the other book by Ouspensky, The Fourth Way, when I was a young man. I had always, since I was at an early age, you know, kind of wondered what was going on really. Why are they teaching this stuff in the schools? Are people this way? You know, just questioning life, the meaning of life, you might say. Um, I met this book. I encountered those two books shortly after my brother died in a car accident. He was a year younger than me, and that threw me for a loop. And so I was very open, and I read the books, and there was hardly well, maybe there were pages relating to some of the cosmology, the table of hydrogens, the food diagram, these very technical things in the fourth way system. I didn't grasp right away, but the ideas about being more asleep, not realizing you are asleep and what that means in psychological and metaphysical terms, all of that just resonated. It was like drinking a cool, big, long, cool glass of water after wandering on a hot day. And the more I pursued the study of it, the more I drank this wonderful liquid. And it's hard to say really, but what I can say is that I kept finding more and more value. I kept seeing deeper behind the map.
Mm-hmm.
I studied the map. I was very good at studying the map, as they say. And if you asked me a question about the map, I could give you an answer. But then at a certain point, I really started seeing that's just the top layer. And it's like being on the surface of the ocean and laying a topographical map on the surface of what's actually in the ocean, all the valleys, the peaks, everything. And then at a certain point, realizing I want to just keep going deeper and really understand the reality of what's being explained, which is my book about transforming negative emotions. That's exactly what that is. Let's swim deep here and really understand what Ouspensky and Gurdjieff were trying to teach or explain. And so I can't say why. I can only say that my interest kept getting deeper. And when many of my friends did, quote unquote, abandon the system, I just didn't feel, I understood where they were coming from. But to me, I abandoned my hold on just the map. For me, there was much more to explore. And I continue to find new depths, new dimensions, new layers that have to do with what the fourth way is talking about, not about the fourth way itself, the words and all of that. What was there another question after that? Did you ask? I don't remember.
So how did you go about, or did you have some hard time integrating some of these concepts or verifications from other paths? Because that was, for me, was interesting, a few years of, hey, I verified this fourth way thing and it's true. And then I verified this thing here, which is true, but how does it fit? Because it seems like they are the opposite. Anyway, how did it go with your hybridization and integrating? Because I know also you really explored and contemplated and commented on also the non-dual teachings and this. Also, you have a book of your favorite selections from sages, Zen, Papaji, other people. So it seems like you chewed equally deep on those, and you didn't get indigestion. Somehow it became a good turn into nutrients. So
yes, I would say,
yeah.
in fact, I had stopped digesting the fourth way to a certain extent. It had gone as far as it could go through my system, you might say, like a meal. And then I started tasting some of these other, and it actually just furthered the process of digestion. It kept it going. It kept it proved to just be an addition. Everything helped everything else. I never had trouble integrating. I never saw that contradicts that or that. To me, it always seemed like, wow, that fits right into that. It's like a Lego set or something. They just started fitting. And now the system, in fact, as a structure, I like to think of it sometimes as a piece of architecture. Suddenly I had some new things I could add on to it, or it could fit into, or I became more interested. Not in an intellectual way, but in a realization way, in a discovery way, as my daughter likes to say, connecting all the dots that are already there. And I felt that's what happened. Suddenly I saw more dots. They had been there, but I didn't, and so I started connecting more dots. And I think what also interested me kept me interested and keeps me interested now, and is keeping me interested in what we're doing or trying to do here, Mihai, is that I realized to just keep accumulating more knowledge and to just keep accumulating more experience for myself. Somehow it seemed right to express that for my benefit, for if it will benefit anyone else. I think of teaching as actually a process of elimination. That's another subject perhaps, but it's like art. It's the result of perception and understanding, and then it comes out of the artist. Artists don't create it like building a building from the ground up. Something comes through them, and then it comes out of them as art or as teaching or something like that. And so it comes back really to something the fourth way talks about, which is the 3 lines of work. I felt I want to keep deepening, but to do that, I need to at least make myself available. I need to come out of the book, as you say. I thought I was doing that through the books to a certain extent. And also, it wasn't just me doing that or doing it for the benefit of others, but it goes back to the whole tradition of all these teachings. I think of the fourth way, of course, but I think of all the sages, you called them earlier, of the past. This tradition of passing on and upholding the reality of reality, that this isn't all there is. And we can't just keep taking life literally and making it better for its own sake. It's not about that. This river of the transmission of truth has to keep flowing. Yes? And so I thought, I want to participate in that. I don't want to just throw something into the river every now and then. And so I see the fourth way now as a full embrace. It's a more full embrace of all of those things I just explained. That until I eliminate, you might say, my understandings, and I have much that's been accumulating over the years, I realize until that moves through me and out and is available as fertilizer, you might say, to other people, only then will I be in a position for even more, even deeper understanding, deeper transcendence, and so on. And the fourth way just has always seemed to me to be the central part of this structure for learning and teaching and understanding.
Yeah, interesting. Stay with me here for a moment. I had a bunch of ideas. Yeah, that's interesting. That one thing that I appreciate about the fourth way and why I'm coming back to it and why I never left it was that, I could see that some of those laws and what it explains, like, hey, this is what happens, this is how it is, this is how it works. It verifies across paths. So even if, let's say, somebody doesn't know anything about the fourth way and is on a Zen path, or is doing some path of some other thing, other method, doesn't matter. Somehow, I verified that some of the stages and stations and the different levels that one will go through and different experience, they were already outlined there. somehow. And it doesn't matter what path you are, there's some similar processes happening. And no matter what path you are on, the laws of the universe are kind of the same. So they are going to affect your traveling on that path. And actually, that's what one thing that really hit me. You mentioned the 3 lines of work. There was some idea that I would see people work with me for some time. They were not interested in the 4th way. They might not even be interested in like awakening, but they were interested to something is wrong in their life and they want to be more, I don't know, more honest, more conscious, more loving, whatever. So they will do some work with me for some months, either doing one-on-one or coming to group, and they will make some changes in their life. Their life will be better. That to the point that, you know, in psychotherapy world, psychotherapy is you know, it's not necessarily about spiritual evolution. It could be about adjusting some things, and you know, that's not the kind of psychotherapy I'd like to be involved. But people come because, hey, there's this problem and can you help me? Yeah. So people come, hey, I have this problem, can you help me? And then I'll offer these tools and methods and interaction, and they will get better and it will be good. And then in psychotherapy, if it's good, then you stop psychotherapy. They say that part of psychotherapy is to stop psychotherapy and to be on your own. Yeah, that's a sign of you have grown and now you can stand your own 2 feet. Yeah, which is good. But what I noticed this phenomena that people come to me, so they are doing well. They are not coming to me for maybe 6 months or more, and then they come back and they are like they have problems, and I'm like, what's happening here? Because he was doing well and he understood these things and this and that, made changes. So then they will come to me and they're like, problems. Yeah. So I'm trying to, what's really going on here? Yeah. So then I could verify this thing over and over. What happened is that they have stopped the favorable effort and conditions that help them do better. They stopped those. Whatever effort and application they were doing, when they started to feel better, they stopped those and they went back to some kind of inertia, being asleep basically. And then the problems will come back. So what helped me in the 4th way, they say this thing, which is relevant for what we are planning to do. It's very relevant. They say this thing, which I think it applies to any path. You need, in order to wake up or reach one's level of consciousness evolution potential, you need knowledge. You need specialized knowledge, yeah, from somebody who has already done that. Yeah, so it'll be the metaphor of the prison. If you want to escape out of the prison, you need a lot of things. It's hard. There are all these Shawshank's Redemption, right? There's this movie. It's a hard thing. The Count of Monte Cristo. It's a hard thing to get out or escape out of prison. You know, decades are necessary or so. But you need a bunch of stuff, including a map. You're including a map where to dig so that you come out not in another prison block. You know, you can dig and end up in another bigger cell, or end up in a yard, or end up in another part. So you need to dig in the right way, in the right direction, so that you can actually come out of prison. Yeah. So those maps, they need to come from somebody who was in prison and managed to get out. Because if the maps are somebody who is still in prison, or if the maps are old and they've been translated and distorted, then, you know, it's okay. So you need higher knowledge, the map. Yeah. Second, I mean, you need to realize that you are in prison, because, you know, they say in the 4th way, this prison of sleep is like the maximum security prison. Basically, inmates, think about it. The inmates don't know that they are in prison. Yeah, this is the highest maximum security in prison. The inmates think that they are free. Anyway, so let me bring it back to my clients. So in the fourth way, they say you need higher knowledge, and then you need to apply yourself a lot, to make a lot of effort continuously in the same direction for a long time. That's what they say. Well, this is impossible. This is impossible without some other special knowledge. So in the fourth way, they say you need, and Buddha says this too, you need the teaching, and you need the Dharma, and you need the Sangha. The Sangha is the spiritual community or community of people that you are talking, like community of practitioners. Yeah. So basically, in the fourth way, they're saying in order to stay on track and to continue with the process of waking up, you need to give yourself certain conditions that will help you stay on track, and you need to have 3 lines of work. 3 lines of work. First line, I'm working on myself by myself, studying, reading, meditating, applying. Yeah, me with me. But that's not enough. Second one is like working with others. Like, I'm talking to Peter about these things. We are sharing our observations. Anyway, there's working with others. And that client was coming to me, and that client was coming to a group. So they had this second line, yeah? And then there's a third line. So the idea is that you can't stay on track for too long if you just stop work and you're just on your own. So there's the necessity for organized group and some special knowledge so we can remind each other, like we all fall asleep and then we can't all sleep at the same time. So there's like a little elbowing. So anyway, my point here was that I realized they stopped having second line and then their work stopped. So I now tell people, even without mentioning fourth way, hey, you need to feed the work by, doesn't even have to come to me, but go somewhere where there are people talking about these things. And so you get yourself this friendship in the work. It's very important, So let me get back to you. I got lost with this stuff. How do you feel it has changed your life, the study and application of these things, of the fourth way? Because ultimately, what's the point, right? I mean, it's not just some wisdom. It's like to have application and change your life in some way.
It has helped me. I am less and less and less identified with Peter and with Peter's life, but in a very healthy way. It's not a dismissal or giving up, it's a more seeing through all of that from a deeper place. And as a result of being less identified, life is richer in both its simple good moments and its simple difficult moments. Both are equally rich. It's hard to find words sometimes to describe what we are ultimately trying to describe when we talk about all these things all the time, yes? So it is not that my life is better. It is as though you go from feeling like you are passing through your life, and it's more that your life is passing through you. And this is why I think when we think of the great masters of the past and we say, oh, wonderful so-and-so, that what we are seeing, what they even left in their teachings and the people they were, that was passing through them, through this something else. It was not them passing through earthly life and So it was sort of, I guess another way to say it, I'm just saying this for the first time as I hear myself speak, that it's sort of turning the glove inside out. It feels this work, this system, the fourth way, with the alignment and support of all these other teachings, has the effect of turning the glove inside out so that you're on the outside of the glove. And it's something I began to realize when I was starting to leave the school that we were in, Mihai, is that I saw that it was strange. It was though I didn't even realize it so clearly at the time, but I was stuck in the feeling of identity as Peter, the student, the follower, the pupil in the school. That I had become stuck in that sense of identity. And it's true that I could have stayed and just learned to be less identified with that and just play that identity or play that role, as we used to say. But somehow that didn't seem right, and that's not where circumstances led me. But I see it now. That person who was making all those efforts and doing all that study, ironically, was passing through me. I was not that person, although at the time I was that person. Both are true, but I was more identified. Yes. So freedom is not freedom from suffering for me. Freedom is not freedom from joy or pleasure or difficulty. It's freedom from the identification with all of those things. And this is where I think a lot of people can make a mistake. Oh, if I, do this, I will be free of all my suffering. But no, the human being that you are doesn't mean you will cease to suffer or have difficulties or have dark moments or low periods or whatever. But they won't engulf you. They won't swallow your consciousness in them. Yes.
Yeah, and the fourth way, this idea of there's two types of suffering. There's unavoidable, real suffering, which is unavoidable and it's real. And Buddha talks about it, connected to anything connected to the fact that there is a impermanence, which brings about the old age, sickness, and death and loss. So that is unavoidable, going through these phases of sickness, old age, death, and loss, and everything that we love, and everybody that loves us, everything we love are going to die. So, and now you add on top of that, let's say, financial pressure, war, all these traumas, whatever. That's a lot already. Being the country being run by people that are unconscious, and all this injustice and inequality and suffering. Yeah, so that's one. But then there is the imaginary self-created suffering, which Gurdjieff was saying that is much more. Actually, we have much more imaginary self-created suffering, actually. And so using this fourth way method and other methods, basically there is a diminishment. From my experience, I diminished a lot of imaginary suffering, and a lot of imaginary self-created bullshit is gone. So actually now there's much less suffering. Yeah. And even there's another thing. Now you have real suffering. Let's say somebody dies, or somebody, you lose. So that could be a 2 weeks affair, or it could be a 25 years wallowing in it, so it depends. Yeah. So yeah.
My wife, Oksana, is reading a book now about Michel de Montaigne. And she read me an interesting quote. He said something like this. This is a paraphrase. He said something like, I have suffered many hardships and things and so on in my life, most of which were imaginary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that will be another topic, I'm sure, that we
Yeah.
will come up in our discussion, this idea. What is suffering? What does that really mean? Why does a human being suffer? Why is our experience of suffering different than, say, the way an animal suffers and the way they respond to it? And
Yeah.
what kind of, does suffering bring some kind of special energy? And then what about unnecessary suffering?
Yeah.
If it's just vapor, it's just psychological vapor. There's real suffering, as you were saying, and then there's all of our ideas about our relationship to the suffering,
Yeah.
which for the most part is unnecessary, and vapor. Yes, so that
Yeah.
that would be a fun. That's always a
Yeah.
big topic.
Yeah, so I think for intention for our this first talk was more like give a little context of our relationship with the fourth way, our relationship with the fourth way with other pathways, our relationship with each other, to give a little human context before going into some study of some ideas and getting too nerdy, although we are both very practical also. So yeah, so that's part number one, and our intention and plan is to have further talks where we actually start to present some of the core essential ideas of the fourth way system in a succinct way, and then we are going to get off the presenter hat and we are going to talk about how can you apply this, how can you make this practical on Monday, and what are the obstacles to this and how it correlates with that. Yeah, so that's the plan, and we are going to take topics so to have a certain body of knowledge, to have the map at least clear, not just in some of Ouspensky's books, or at the same time, I mean, I'm lucky we have your books, Peter, so we can use as a knowledge, but then we have also our talks. The fourth way is this idea that you need knowledge, but then knowledge is not enough, so you need to try to apply it. Then you develop your being aspect. So the line of knowledge, it's good to have wise knowledge, not distorted knowledge. So knowledge, and then apply them. It got the being, like I'm more awake, basically, and I have real understanding. Yeah, it's not just, oh, somebody said this, but I have understood it intellectually. I have applied, I have chewed on it, I have verified it, and now it's mine. I can /do it /be it. I can be it. So that's my understanding. Yeah. So the fourth way is geared towards, yes, knowledge is very good, but wake up your being and then accumulate understanding. So yeah, we want to use these talks as a support for the knowledge and developing understanding. At the same time, we want to have them future talks, like also practical exercises, alarm clocks, how to apply it. Yeah, target, all of this is meant towards some kind of living applying of these things, and I'm having groups and workshops and intensives, and hopefully I would like to ask Peter to join some of them, and maybe we can do some things together, so we can better share this, teach it, and be it together, make it our own.
Makes me think again about what my intentions are. Some of my intentions with this, Mihai, is that in my books, the books I've written are not they're not really full descriptions of the fourth way. I purposely did not want to just repeat what Peter Ouspensky said, or what Mr. Gurdjieff said, or how Ouspensky interpreted all that. That's already been done. There are all those books, and I still recommend them to people. So my intention was not to do that. It was to bring a different slant. It's not quite right. So I highlight the fourth way, and I use it as the basis for the things I talk about in the books. And so, but what I'm finding of value with what we're going to be doing, I hope, is this will be an attempt to actually revisit the idea of presenting, representing, representing these system ideas as more of a whole, but in a way, as you say, that is practical and relates to our experience. This is not an attempt to repeat Ouspensky and Gurdjieff, but to honor them, to represent what they put together, and put it forth through our understanding, and that we don't have all the answers. This is an exploration. This is a way for us to even deepen our understanding. I think it will be, I've said this to you offline too, it just feels like a good direction, in a right direction. It feels very good to me, and I look forward to doing it with you. And I'm interested to see what response, if any, there may be. Will this intention of ours prove useful? Will the result actually align with our intention?
Yeah.
I look forward to watching and seeing what happens.
Yeah.
I know we'll learn a lot either way, or however this goes, we will benefit. And actually, I know that some people also will benefit. I know that because I know where we're coming from with this. There's no way that some people would not benefit from listening in to some of our conversations.
Also, I talked to some of the people that are following my work, and they were saying, like, I mean, and I was telling them, if you guys already resonate what I'm doing since you are coming, I was just veiling this. I would like to give it more full on. I think that you are going to like it. It's juicy in a meaningful way. All right, Peter. So let's leave it for here, and looking forward to actually the next episode. We are actually going to go into actual presentation of some of the fourth way sectors of the map, while bringing our commentary and practical application of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mihai, and thank you for initiating this. I'm very grateful. Look forward to being with you.
Yeah, me too.